long before you should start planning your destination wedding? Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm Svetlana from Best Indian Weddings Italy, the first and only wedding planning agency in Italy specialized in Indian weddings. Every day I help Indian brides and grooms-to-be realize their authentic Indian celebrations in the most beautiful country in the world. I'm running this series of videos called SOS Indian Weddings in Italy with useful tips and advice that you won't find anywhere else. So if you are looking to host your destination wedding in Italy, then please subscribe to my channel, hit the bell to always keep updated with the new videos every week. The topic of this week is how long before you should start planning your destination wedding? This topic is quite popular as many couples ask me about the time needed to plan their Indian wedding in Italy. Some couples are afraid to be late even if they have more than 18 months at their disposal. And some others are very relaxed, being sure that even 6 months in advance is a pretty good time for the planning. Especially because it would probably be the same time needed to plan their domestic wedding. For this reason, I'm doing this video today to show you what are the main points to pay attention to make sure you stay within the right time frame to plan your destination wedding. First of all, there isn't a specific time needed for the planning. This aspect is very personal and depends mostly on the needs of every single couple. In my experience, we planned weddings in 4 months and some others in more than 1 year and a half. The amount of work to do is always the same with just small variation. The main point is the management of the time at your disposal, because with a short time you would need to achieve your tasks in much less time than if you would have a larger gap between the start of the planning to the wedding itself. So, how to understand when it is the right time to start? Someone could think that the size of the wedding party is the first decisive aspect and that small intimate weddings can be planned even in a couple of months, while for large wedding groups you need to start way in advance. Of course, the number of guests you bring with you is very important, but it's not as crucial for the planning as it is for the choice of the wedding venue. From my experience, the very first aspect to pay attention to is the date of your wedding. And when I talk about the date, it's also addressed to those couples who don't have a specific date in mind yet, but who have already decided if they absolutely want a weekend or not. Because it's exactly the day of the week that is the most decisive factor for the planning. And the bank holidays, of course, same thing. You could have a very intimate wedding of just 50 people, but if you set on a weekend and maybe during the wedding's peak season, then you must start fairly in advance. As you can imagine, weekends are the first to be sold, and all the local couples prefer to get married on a weekend. And since you need at least 2 or 3 days for your celebrations, the venue you choose must have the whole weekend available both for rooms and the event spaces. And it's not easy at all. Just to give you an example, we are now working on a small wedding of 50 guests booked 11 months in advance, and the couple only have one specific date over a weekend in September, which is the wedding's peak season not only for destination weddings, but especially for local couples. And we are struggling to find available venues for them, because many venues don't have any availability for any weekend in September anymore. So if you too consider just 1 or 2 dates for your wedding, both over a weekend from May to September, then my advice is to start at least 18 months in advance to make sure you have a good range of venues to choose from. If instead you are flexible on the date and are happy with a midweek wedding, then you can start a year in advance or even less, depending on the period you choose. As you can imagine, summertime, especially July and August, are more requested than other months because it's easier for people to get days off from work, being it a holiday time in many occupations. And for some of them, it's the only possibility to hold their wedding abroad, as for teachers, for example. So for a midweek wedding, I would say from 8 to 12 months in advance, depending on the months you choose. The second aspect to consider is the type of venue you want for your wedding. If an all-in-one venue were to stay with all your guests and hold all of your events, or a venue with separate accommodation where to move only on the wedding day, while your pre-wedding events would be held in your hotel or in a smaller venue. In the second case, you could find availability even within a shorter time in advance, always keeping the date aspect in mind first. While in the first case, you would need to start your research much more time in advance. I would say not less than 10 to 12 months before the wedding, especially if you require the exclusive use of the property, because sometimes it can happen that a venue could have event spaces available and also most of the rooms, but then there are 2 or 3 rooms already booked by some tourists and they can't do anything about that. They can't cancel those bookings to give you the exclusive use of the property. And when you don't have the exclusive use, there are always some restrictions for the noise, for the loud music, for the use of some specific spaces, together with having external people at the property during your events. And it's here where the number of your guests is important, because there are many more smaller wedding venues with accommodation on site rather than bigger ones. And if you need to accommodate 150 or more guests in one venue, the choice of venues suitable for your wedding is very limited compared to the venues for parties of 100 or less guests. Of course, it's also important to figure out for how many days you would need a venue, how many events are you planning to host. All of that is pivotal for a correct start of the wedding planning, especially if you want a good range of choice and not just going with the first venue that gives you their availability after you have spent days and nights contacting dozens of other venues without finding any available date. And here we come to the third important aspect for a correct start of your wedding planning, the time you have to dedicate to it. If you have a lot of free time, if you don't have a hectic working schedule, if you are mentally relaxed and able to concentrate on the organization of your Indian wedding in Italy without being interrupted every 10 minutes by job calls, then you can surely start closer to the date if you prefer. If instead you have just a little time, maybe just evenings when you come back home tired and would definitely prefer to relax instead of doing exhausting research, or maybe just weekends, then my advice is starting at least 18 months in advance to make sure you can do it. In this case, it's crucial you prepare a plan from the very beginning. I mean, you write a list of tasks to achieve, you put them in order, you assign a rough time needed for each of them, and you put them in your calendar. This way you don't risk delaying something and then going through sleepless nights because you're not on time. But you go little by little with your planning, following the specific order of things to do so that you don't overlook anything. It's crucial to have this planning schedule to live your wedding planning with joy and happiness and not becoming a bridezilla or groomzilla because you have to manage your busy work with your wedding and you don't have enough time for both. It's also important to know that the planning schedule of a destination wedding is different from the one of a domestic wedding. There are different aspects to prioritize and you must know them. There are different online resources that provide you with planning schedule for a domestic wedding, but it could be wrong if you plan your Indian wedding abroad. Of course, we're talking about do-it-yourself weddings, and we have created planning schedules specifically for Indian couples planning their own wedding in Italy. They are included with our signature digital program, How to Plan Your Indian Wedding in Italy on Your Own. There is a link in the description. And if you don't know when and how to start planning your celebrations and want to save time and money and be sure you go down the right path without making any mistake, then this is definitely the best solution for you. I suggest you go and check the page out. As you can see, there isn't a specific starting date for planning a destination wedding in Italy, but there are a lot of aspects to consider to figure out the best moment for it. I can just say that before COVID, a time needed to plan a complex Indian wedding in Italy was of 10 to 12 months. And right now it's a little bit extended because of many events postponed to 2022. Anyway, as I always suggest, make the list of your priorities first. Decide on your events, put down a rough guest list, ask for auspicious dates, and then make a rough calculation of the time you would potentially need to bring your wedding plans to life based on the criteria I have provided in this video. And if you need some help with your planning, set a call and we can discuss it face to face. That's all for today. Thank you for watching this video that I hope can truly help you with planning your amazing Indian wedding in Italy. If you haven't done it yet, subscribe to my channel, follow Best Indian Weddings Italy on Facebook and Instagram, comment in the posts, and I will be happy to answer. See you next week!